The bridge of the Virexia hummed with the controlled chaos of 1,000 synchronized minds working as one. I stood at the entrance, my diplomatic credentials clutched in sweaty palms, watching officers move with the precision of clockwork. No wasted motion, no idle chatter, just the soft chirp of instruments and the occasional clipped command in Korthari battle tongue. "Cultural Attaché Kalendarel," announced Commander Talanex, her voice cutting through the ambient noise like a plasma blade through vacuum. "Reporting as ordered." Every head on the bridge turned. 40 pairs of eyes, all female, all cold as the void between stars. The Korthari were matriarchal to their core, their males relegated to breeding and domestic duties. And here I was, a human male, standing on their most sacred ground. Star General Veristel didn't turn from her command throne. She simply raised one gloved hand, and the bridge resumed its ballet of efficiency. Her profile was sharp enough to cut glass, jaw set in perpetual disapproval. The holographic tactical display bathed her face in ethereal blue, making her look like some ancient war goddess carved from ice. "The human," she said. Not a question, but a statement of fact. "You're 3 minutes late." I checked my chronometer. "Actually, General, I'm 2 minutes early by standard galactic time." The temperature on the bridge seemed to drop 10 degrees. Commander Nex's hand drifted toward her sidearm. Varistel finally turned. She was everything the intelligence briefings had promised, and more. Tall, even by Korthari standards, with the kind of presence that made gravity seem negotiable. Her uniform was a work of art, every medal and insignia precisely placed. Not a thread out of alignment. But it was her eyes that caught me, purple as a nebula's heart, utterly devoid of warmth. "Standard galactic time is for civilians," she said, rising from her throne with liquid grace. "On my ship, we use Korthari military standard. You are now 4 minutes late." She descended the steps from her command platform, each footfall echoing in the sudden silence. The crew had stopped breathing. Even the instruments seemed to quiet their electronic chatter. "I was told," I began, trying to keep my voice steady, "that my position here was largely ceremonial, a gesture of goodwill between our peoples." "You were told incorrectly." She stopped inches from me, close enough that I could see the faint scars on her neck, barely visible beneath her high collar. Battle scars, worn like jewelry. "Everything on this ship has a purpose. Everything serves the mission. If you cannot serve, you are waste, and waste gets ejected through the airlock." I should have nodded, should have apologized, should have done anything except what I did next. I smiled. "You know," I said, tilting my head slightly, "you're adorable when you're angry." The words hung in the air like unexploded ordnance. Commander Nex's hand was now firmly on her weapon. The navigation officer had turned fully around in her chair, mouth agape. Even the ship's AI seemed to stutter, the lights flickering for just a moment. But it was Veristel's reaction that would haunt the halls of this ship for cycles to come. She blushed. It started at her neck, a faint purple tinge that crept up like dawn breaking over an alien horizon. By the time it reached her cheeks, her perfect composure had cracked like ice under thermal stress. For exactly 2.7 seconds, Star General Veristel, terror of the Ashkari Rebellion, sword of the Korthari Empire, looked like a flustered academy cadet. Then her fist connected with my jaw. I hit the deck hard, tasting copper and seeing stars that definitely weren't on any navigation chart. Through the ringing in my ears, I heard the barely suppressed gasps of the bridge crew. In Korthari military culture, showing emotion was weakness, and weakness was death. "Seize him," Varys commanded, but her voice cracked on the first syllable. She cleared her throat and tried again. "Seize the human. Charge him with conduct unbecoming and insulting a superior officer." 2 security officers hauled me to my feet. My jaw throbbed, but I couldn't help noticing how Varys wouldn't meet my eyes. how she turned away just a fraction too quickly, how her hands clenched and unclenched at her sides. "General," Commander Nex ventured carefully, "the diplomatic immunity protocols clearly state—" "I am aware of the protocols, Commander." Varys had regained some of her composure, but there was something different now. A hairline fracture in her perfect armor. Confine him to quarters. Restricted access. No communications. As they dragged me toward the lift, I caught a glimpse of a small drone hovering near the ceiling, its recording light blinking red. Standard procedure on all Korthari vessels. Every moment documented for the glory of the Empire. Every moment, including this one. The cell they threw me in was actually quite comfortable by military standards. A bunk, a desk, a small viewport showing the stars wheeling slowly past. They'd even left me my personal effects, minus anything that could be used as a weapon or communication device. I sat on the bunk and rubbed my jaw, replaying the scene in my mind. The intelligence division had been wrong about so many things. They'd said the Korthari were emotionless, but that wasn't true. They had emotions. They'd just built an entire civilization around suppressing them. And I just made their highest-ranking field commander blush, like a schoolgirl in front of her entire bridge crew. The door chimed. I expected guards. Maybe Commander Nex coming to explain exactly how many ways I'd violated protocol. Instead, a young Korthari officer entered, barely out of the academy by the look of her. She carried a medical kit and wore the insignia of a junior analyst. "I'm here to treat your injury," she said, not meeting my eyes. "I'm fine," I said, but she was already running a diagnostic scanner over my jaw. "Hairline fracture of the mandible," she reported. "Minor soft tissue damage. You're lucky. The general usually hits harder." "Usually," I winced as she applied a regenerative patch. "This is a common occurrence." For the first time, she looked directly at me. Her eyes were green, unusual for a Korthari, and there was something in them I couldn't quite place. Curiosity, amusement. "You really don't understand what you've done, do you? Enlighten me." She finished with the patch and sat back on her heels. "My name is Kira Vel. I'm assigned to cultural analysis. I study alien behaviors and their impact on Korthari society. And my behavior is going to be the subject of doctoral dissertations for the next 100 cycles." She pulled out a small tablet, showing me a graph covered in spikes and valleys. "This is the ship's efficiency rating for the past 6 hours. See this drop? That's when the incident occurred. We've lost 14% productivity. Crew members are distracted, whispering. Some are even reviewing the footage." "The drone," I said. "It recorded everything." "Everything," she confirmed. "By tomorrow, every ship in the fleet will have seen it. By next week, it'll reach the homeworld. The great star General Varys Tell, brought low by a human male with a smile and 5 words." I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cell's temperature. I didn't mean to destroy her career, undermine 50 cycles of reputation building, expose the greatest weakness in our society. Kira stood, gathering her supplies. "Of course you didn't. That's what makes it so perfect." "Wait." I caught her arm as she turned to leave. "What weakness?" She looked at where my hand touched her sleeve, and I quickly let go. Physical contact was another taboo I'd apparently forgotten. We're not machines, human. We're people. We love, we hate, we fear, we blush. She said the last word like it was profanity. But admitting that is admitting that our entire social structure is built on a lie. That the logic we worship is just a mask for the chaos underneath. And my comment? Rip the mask off. In front of everyone. She moved toward the door. "The general has called an emergency staff meeting. They're trying to decide what to do with you. Some want you executed. Some want you transferred. And some are wondering what else you might reveal about us. What other masks you might remove." The door opened at her approach. "Enjoy your stay, Calendarelle, however brief it might be." She left me alone with my thoughts and the slowly turning stars. I moved to the viewport, watching the distant lights of other ships in the fleet. Somewhere out there, Earth hung like a blue marble in the dark, blissfully unaware that one of its diplomats had just committed the gravest sin in Korthari culture. He'd made them feel. The hours crawled by. I tried to sleep but couldn't shake the image of Veristel's face in that moment of vulnerability. The way her purple eyes had widened. The way her perfect composure had shattered like spun glass. I'd been sent here as a punishment. Really. After the incident on Kepler Station where I'd resolved a trade dispute by getting both parties embarrassingly drunk and making them sing karaoke together. The diplomatic corps had called it unorthodox. The Zafrani Trade Confederation had called it the best negotiation in decades. But that didn't matter to the bureaucrats. "You lack gravitas, Durrell," Ambassador Veller had said. "Perhaps some time with the Korthari will teach you the value of proper protocol." If only he could see me now. The door chimed again. This time it was Commander Nex, flanked by 2 guards. Her expression was unreadable, which probably took considerable effort. "The General will see you now," she said. "Am I being court-martialed?" "That remains to be determined. Follow me." We walked through corridors that were monuments to military efficiency. Every surface polished to mirror brightness. Every corner squared with mathematical precision. Crew members passed us in perfect formation. But I caught the sideways glances, the subtle whispers that died as we approached. The General's ready room was a study in minimalism. No personal effects, no artwork, just a desk, 2 chairs, and a wall-mounted display showing technical readouts. Veristel stood with her back to us, hands clasped behind her, studying something on the screen. "Leave us," she said without turning. Commander Nex hesitated. "General, regulations state that when dealing with a prisoner—" "I said leave us, Commander." The ice in her voice could have frozen a sun. Nex and the guards retreated, the door sealing with a soft hiss. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then she turned, and I saw something I hadn't expected. Exhaustion. It was subtle. Just a slight droop to her shoulders, a faint darkness under her eyes. But it was there. "Do you know what you've cost me?" she asked quietly. "I'm beginning to understand." "No." She moved to her desk, pulling up a holographic display. "You don't... Look." The display showed message after message, all marked with priority flags. I couldn't read Korthari script, but I recognized the official seals. High Command, the Admiralty, the Matriarch Council itself. 16 different commanders have already called for my removal, she said. My own mentor, General Thera Kess, sent a personal message expressing her profound disappointment. The woman who trained me, who sponsored my career, who stood beside me through 43 campaigns, is disappointed because I blushed. "I'm sorry," I said and meant it. "I didn't think—" "No, you didn't think. You humans never do. You feel first, think later. It's why half the galaxy considers you children." She deactivated the display and finally looked at me directly. "And it's why you're so dangerous." "Dangerous. We're the youngest species in the Council. Our technology is generations behind yours. Our military is irrelevant." She cut me off with a gesture. "You don't conquer with weapons. You conquer with this." She gestured vaguely at me, at the situation, at everything. With bad jokes and social awkwardness. With emotion. With chaos. With the fundamental inability to suppress your basic nature. She sat down heavily, a startling breach of her usual perfect posture. "Do you know why we fear emotion, human? I've read the histories, the logic wars, the great harmonization, propaganda." The word was bitter on her lips. Pretty lies we tell ourselves. The truth is simpler and uglier. We fear emotion because we feel too much. When a Korthari loves, we love with the force of a supernova. When we hate, we burn entire systems. When we grieve. She trailed off, lost in some memory I couldn't share. So you built a culture around control, I said, sitting uninvited in the chair across from her. Another breach of protocol she didn't call me on. Locked everything away behind walls of logic and duty. It worked. For 1,000 cycles. It worked. We built an empire. We brought order to chaos. We became the most disciplined military force in known space. She laughed, a sound like crystal breaking. And then you showed up. One human hardly, not one human. Your entire species. Do you know what the other races call you behind your backs? The emotional plague. The chaos bringers. The ones who make everyone else feel. That's not. 3 cycles ago, a human trader visited Korthari Prime. She hugged one of our customs officials. Hugged her in public. That official spent 6 months in therapy. Her entire family was shamed. Her daughter was expelled from the military academy. That seems excessive. That was merciful. A generation ago, she would have been executed. Vera stood abruptly, pacing to the viewport. And now I understand why. Because you blushed? Because I wanted to smile back. The admission hung between us like a confession of murder. She kept her back to me, shoulders rigid with the effort of maintaining control. When you said those words, for just a moment, I forgot 50 cycles of training, forgot my duty, my honor, my purpose. For just a moment I was merely a woman, being flirted with by an interesting male. She turned, and her purple eyes were fierce. Do you have any idea how terrifying that is? I think I'm beginning to. No, you're not. Because you've never had to choose between who you are and who your entire civilization needs you to be. She returned to her desk, activated a new display. This is General Merrick Kern. Have you heard of him? The face on the display was harsh, even by Korthari standards. Male, which was unusual for a general, with scars that spoke of battles won through brutality rather than strategy. He's a traditionalist, she continued. Believes that any contamination of Korthari purity must be purged. He's been trying to remove me from command for cycles. Claims I'm too soft on aliens, too willing to compromise. And now, thanks to you, he has ammunition. What will he do? He's invoking the right of judgment, an ancient law that allows any officer to challenge a superior's fitness for command if they display emotional instability. Her fingers drummed on the desk, the first nervous gesture I'd seen from her. The challenge will be public, broadcast to the entire fleet. If I fail, you won't fail. She looked at me like I'd suggested the laws of physics were negotiable. Human. I blushed. In front of my bridge crew. In front of recording devices. The evidence of my weakness is already spreading through the fleet like a virus. How exactly do you expect me to convince a tribunal that I'm fit for command? By proving that emotion isn't weakness. That's not. Possible legal logical. I leaned forward. General, with all due respect to your 1,000 cycles of tradition, you're fighting the wrong battle. You're trying to prove you're still the perfect emotionless commander. But what if instead, you proved that emotion makes you stronger? She stared at me for a long moment. You're insane. Probably. But I'm also right. Your species didn't conquer a quarter of the galaxy by being weak. You did it by channeling your emotions into purpose. The logic wars didn't eliminate emotion. They just buried it. And buried things have a way of clawing back to the surface. Even if I believed that which I don't, Merrick would never accept such an argument. Neither would the tribunal. Neither would you. Yesterday, I stood. Decision made. General, I'm going to make you an offer. Let me help you. Help me, she laughed again, That broken crystal sound. You've destroyed my career, humiliated me in front of my crew, and given my greatest enemy the weapon he needs to finish me. How could you possibly help me? By doing what humans do best. By being emotional, chaotic, unpredictable. I met her eyes, saw the fear there, the confusion, the anger, but underneath it all, something else. Hope, curiosity. Let me stand with you at the tribunal. Let me show your people that emotion isn't the enemy. It never was. They'll laugh you out of the chamber, if Merrick doesn't have you shot first. Maybe. But what have you got to lose? Your career is already in ruins. Your reputation is already crumbling. Why not take one last gamble? She was quiet for so long, I thought she'd fallen into some kind of Korthari meditation. Then, slowly, she smiled. It was tiny, barely a quirk of her lips, but it transformed her face completely. You know, she said softly, you're quite infuriating when you're right. I grinned. You're adorable when you admit it. This time, she didn't blush. She threw a datapad at my head. You're adorable when angry, Chapter 2. The datapad missed my head by inches, clattering against the wall behind me. For a moment, we both stared at it, then at each other. The absurdity of the situation struck us simultaneously. The highest-ranking Korthari field commander had just thrown office equipment at a human diplomat. If the bridge incident had been a crack in her armor, this was a full breach. I should have you court-martialed for that, I said, rubbing the back of my neck where the datapad had grazed me. For what dodging? Her smile widened fractionally. Poor reflexes are a punishable offense in the Korthari military. Is humor? The smile vanished. Yes. A soft chime interrupted us. Commander Nex's voice filtered through the comm system. General, priority message from High Command. Admiral Thessa Ral requests immediate communication. Varus's jaw tightened. Route it to my private terminal, Commander, and maintain the human's confinement. I'll deal with him shortly. Understood, General. She turned to me. All business again. You'll return to your quarters. We'll speak again after I've dealt with this. Varus. I used her first name deliberately. Watched her stiffen at the familiarity. Whatever they're saying, whatever threats they're making, remember, you're not alone in this. I've been alone my entire life. Human. It's the Korthari way. She activated the door controls. Guards, escort Mr. Durrell back to his cell. As the guards led me away, I caught a glimpse of her face reflected in the polished surface of her desk. The mask was cracking, and beneath it was something raw and frightening and utterly, beautifully alive. My cell had been upgraded in my absence. A larger viewport, better furnishings, and most surprisingly, a small selection of human foods in the nutrition dispenser. Someone had been paying attention. The question was who and why. I was examining a passable attempt at coffee when Kira Vell returned, this time without the medical kit. She carried a stack of data tablets and an expression of barely contained excitement. You've started something, she said without preamble, spreading the tablets across my desk. Look at these efficiency reports. The graphs were damning. Every department showed decreased productivity. Navigation was off by 0.003%. Weapons targeting showed a 1.2-second delay in response times. Even the mess hall was reporting anomalies. They're distracted, I said. They're thinking... She pulled up another display. This is social network traffic among the crew. Encrypted, of course, but the volume is unprecedented. They're talking about what happened, asking questions. Some are even defending you. Defending me? You made the general human for a moment. Do you know how many of them have never seen a superior officer show genuine emotion? For some of the younger crew, it's... She searched for words. Revolutionary. And for the older crew, terrifying. She switched tablets, showing me a different data set. 3 requests for transfers, 2 medical leaves for emotional distress, and one what? One formal complaint filed with the Orthodoxy Council, from General Merrick Kern. She showed me the document, dense with Korthari script. He's not just challenging her fitness for command, he's calling for a full purification tribunal, which means if she loses, it's not just her career at stake, it's her life. Kira gathered her tablets, but left one behind. Study this. It's a primer on Korthari law. If you're really going to help her, you need to understand what you're up against. Why are you helping me? She paused at the door. Because I've spent my entire career studying alien cultures, looking for weaknesses we could exploit. But you've shown me something different. You've shown me our weakness. And maybe it's time someone did. After she left, I dove into the legal texts. Korthari law was a labyrinth of precedent and tradition, each statute building on centuries of interpretation. But the right of judgment was older than most, predating even the logic wars. The basics were simple enough. Any officer could challenge a superior's emotional fitness. The challenge party had 3 choices: submit to immediate removal, prove their continued logic through a series of tests, or invoke the ancient right of Talvar trial by philosophical combat. That last option caught my attention. It wasn't physical combat, but a battle of ideas. Each party would present their worldview to a tribunal of peers. The winner wasn't determined by vote, but by which argument proved more fundamentally true to the Korthari spirit. It was subjective, messy, emotional. It was perfect. I was deep in legal precedent when the door chimed again. This time, it was Commander Nex herself, and she didn't look happy. The general wants to see you, now. Another throwing contest. Her hand twitched toward her sidearm. Human. I have served under Varys Tell for 15 cycles. I have seen her face down armadas, negotiate with terrorists, and perform surgery on herself after aborting action. I have never, until today, seen her doubt herself. If you are responsible for destroying the finest military mind of our generation, I will personally ensure you answer for it. What if I'm responsible for saving her? From what? From herself. From a system that's slowly killing your entire species. I stood, meeting her hard gaze. Commander, when was the last time you laughed, really laughed? Not just acknowledged humor with a regulation smile. That's not relevant. Everything's relevant. You're so busy being perfect soldiers you've forgotten how to be people. And it's eating you alive from the inside. She was quiet for a long moment. Then, so softly I almost missed it, she said, I was 8 cycles old. What? The last time I laughed. My younger sister had just failed her first combat assessment. She was devastated, thought her life was over. So I made a joke. Something stupid about how at least she'd managed to shoot the ceiling, which was more than I'd done at her age. She laughed. I laughed. Our mother heard us. What happened? Correctional training. 6 months. My sister went into civilian service. I never made that mistake again. She straightened, armor back in place. Follow me. Varys's ready room had been transformed. The walls now displayed star charts, legal documents, and what looked like psychological profiles. She stood at the center of it all, still in uniform but with her jacket unfastened, a small rebellion that spoke volumes. Leave us, Commander, she said without looking up from a holographic display. General, I must protest. Noted, dismissed. Next left, but not before shooting me a look that promised creative violence if I stepped wrong. Merrick's moving faster than I expected, Varys said, once we were alone. The tribunal is set for tomorrow. He's invoking emergency protocols, claiming my contamination poses an immediate threat to fleet security. Can he do that? He's done it. She finally looked at me, and I was struck again by how exhausted she seemed. I've been studying the precedents. In the last 1,000 cycles, there have been 47 purification tribunals. None of the challenged officers survived. Either they were executed for emotional deviance, or they took the honorable path and ended themselves before the verdict could be rendered. She said it matter-of-factly, like discussing weather patterns. It's considered the logical choice. Better to die with honor intact than live as proof of weakness. That's insane! That's Korthari. She moved to the viewport, gazing out at the stars. Do you know why I requested this command? Why I pushed so hard for the Virexia? I assumed it was the prestige flagship of the Third Fleet. No. Her reflection in the transparent aluminum was ghostly. It was because of Earth. That caught me off guard. Earth. Your world is everything we fear. Chaotic, emotional, illogical. A planet where a dozen different governments somehow coexist. Where art is valued as much as science. Where people fall in love without genetic compatibility, assessments, or state approval. She pressed a hand against the viewport. I wanted to understand how you survived, how you thrived, how you went from splitting atoms to splitting space-time in less than 2 centuries. We had help. No. The Zafrani gave you mathematics. The Altarians shared navigation principles. But the drive to reach the stars, the audacity to look at the impossible and say, let's try anyway, that was all you. And you wanted to study us. I wanted to protect us. From you. She turned, and there was something fierce in her eyes. Every species you've encountered, you've changed. The rigid collective now has a comedy entertainment channel. The hive mind of Proxima actually split into individuals for recreational purposes. Even the synthetic intelligences of the core worlds have started writing poetry. You say that like it's a bad thing. For a culture built on the suppression of emotion, it's catastrophic. She moved back to her desk, pulling up a new display. But I was wrong. We're not protecting ourselves. We're dying, slowly, generation by generation. We're becoming exactly what we pretend to be. Machines. So change. Change. She laughed, that broken sound again. Do you know what happened the last time someone suggested fundamental cultural reform, the heretic wars? 3 billion dead. Entire systems burned to prevent the infection of new ideas. And they were just suggesting minor adjustments to military protocol. But you're considering it. I'm considering many things I shouldn't. She met my eyes. Including your offer of help. And Talvar. Trial by philosophical combat. It's the only way that doesn't require me to prove I'm still emotionally stable by their definition. Instead, I can argue that their definition is wrong. That's a hell of a gamble. It's suicide. Merrick is a master rhetorician. He's spent decades perfecting arguments about Korthari purity. He has the weight of tradition, the fear of the masses, and the backing of the Orthodoxy Council. She pulled up his image again. What do I have? Me? A human who makes jokes at inappropriate times and has no understanding of our culture. Exactly. I'm chaos incarnate, the thing he fears most. And you know what chaos does to rigid systems. Destroys them. Transforms them. I moved closer, close enough to see the faint lines of stress around her eyes. General Varys, you don't need to beat him at his own game. You need to change the game entirely. How? By telling the truth. By standing in front of that tribunal and admitting that yes, you blushed. Yes, you felt something. And yes, it made you stronger, not weaker. They'll execute me before I finish the first sentence. Maybe. Or maybe they'll see what I see. A leader brave enough to face her own humanity. Someone strong enough to be vulnerable. I paused, then added, someone adorable when she's angry. This time, she didn't throw anything. She just stared at me for a long moment, then shook her head. You really believe that? Don't you? That emotion is strength. I know it is. Every human achievement, every work of art, every scientific breakthrough, every act of heroism, they all started with someone feeling something so strongly they had to act on it. Love, fear, anger, joy, they're not weaknesses. They're fuel. Fuel for destruction, according to our histories. Fuel for creation, according to ours. She was quiet for a while, processing. Then she pulled up a new display, showing crew manifests and personnel files. If we're doing this and I haven't agreed to anything, we'll need allies. Marek won't be alone. He'll have the full weight of the traditionalist movement behind him. What about your crew? Some will support me out of loyalty, others out of fear. But when it comes to a philosophical challenge to our entire way of life, she shrugged. I honestly don't know. There's Kira Vell, the cultural analyst. She's already questioning things. Young, idealistic, and academically focused. Hardly a powerful ally. But she made a note anyway. Who else? Commander Nex? Tala Varys looked surprised. She's more traditional than most. Career military, exemplary record. Never a single emotional deviation noted in her file. She told me about her sister. About the last time she laughed. Varys's fingers stilled over the controls. She told you about Mira. She didn't mention the name. Just that her sister went into civilian service after failing combat assessment. Mira Nex is one of our most celebrated architects. She designs habitats that are unconventional, incorporates curves where tradition demands angles, uses colors beyond regulation, gray and blue. There were attempts to censure her work, but it's too popular among civilians. A ghost of a smile crossed her face. Tala never speaks of her. But she thinks of her, and she remembers laughing. I pulled up a chair, sitting across from her. How many others on this ship have similar stories? How many are one genuine moment away from questioning everything? Too many, or not enough, depending on perspective. She deactivated the displays, leaning back in her chair. Tell me about Earth, about how you balance chaos and order. We don't. That's the point. We're constantly falling apart and pulling ourselves together. Democracy is messy. Art is subjective. Love is unpredictable. But somehow, it works. Your crime rates suggest otherwise. Our creation rates suggest it does. For every act of destruction, we have 1,000 acts of beauty. For every war, we have 1,000,000 love stories. We're not perfect. We're just human. And you think Korthari could be the same? I think Korthari already are. You're just really good at hiding it. I gestured around the room. Even this space. You've personalized it. The way you've arranged the displays, the slight temperature adjustment from standard, the fact that you kept that datapad I dodged instead of recycling it. These are choices. Personal, emotional choices. She glanced at the dented datapad sitting on a shelf, caught out. That's evidence for the assault charges. It's a souvenir, a reminder of the moment the great Star General lost control. I grinned and liked it. I did not. She stopped, took a breath. This is what you do, isn't it? Push buttons, find cracks, exploit weaknesses. I prefer to think of it as finding strengths hidden under armor. The tribunal won't be charmed by wordplay. Good thing I'm not trying to charm them. I'm trying to save them. I leaned forward. Varys, your people are dying. Not physically, but spiritually. Every generation gets a little better at suppressing emotion, a little worse at feeling joy. Where does it end? In perfect order, perfect efficiency, perfect extinction. Perfect extinction. I pulled out the tablet Kira had left me. I've been reading your histories, not the official ones, the real ones. Birth rates declining, suicide rates climbing, creative output non-existent. You're becoming exactly what you claim to value, and it's killing you. And your solution, is to have me stand before the highest judicial body in our civilization and tell them to embrace chaos. My solution is to have you stand before them and tell your truth, whatever that is. I met her eyes. What do you really want, Varys? Not what your training says you should want. Not what your culture demands. What do you want? For a moment, her mask slipped completely. And what I saw underneath wasn't the hardened general or the perfect soldier. It was a woman who'd spent 50 cycles, 50 years by Earth standards, trapped in armor, that was slowly suffocating her. I want to laugh, she said quietly. I want to cry at beautiful things. I want to get angry without calculating optimal response patterns. I want to... She stopped, shaking her head. It doesn't matter what I want. It's the only thing that matters. You don't understand. Even having this conversation is treason. Even thinking these thoughts is deviation. If I stand before that tribunal and speak these words, they won't just execute me. They'll erase me. Everything I've achieved, every life I've saved, every battle I've won gone, as if I never existed. Then make sure what you say is worth being erased for. She stared at me. You're serious. Deadly serious. Which, granted, is unusual for me. I stood, moving to the viewport. Look out there. Thousands of ships, millions of Korthari, all of them perfect soldiers. All of them dying inside. If your words, your truth, could save even one of them, wouldn't that be worth any price? One life against my legacy. One soul against a lie. I turned back to her. Besides, who says you'll lose Merrick's expecting you to play by the rules? To argue within the accepted framework? What happens when you flip the table entirely? Chaos, she said softly. Exactly. And from chaos, nothing. Chaos brings nothing but destruction. Really, because from where I'm standing, chaos brought me to your bridge. Chaos made you blush. Chaos started conversations among your crew that have never been spoken. Chaos is already changing things. Changing them for the worse, according to many. According to Merrick. According to the frightened old guard who see their control slipping. I moved back to the desk. What does the younger generation say? What does Kira Vel say? What does your heart say? Korthari don't listen to their hearts. Bullshit. The profanity startled her. Good. Korthari have the biggest hearts in the galaxy. You just lock them away. You fight with passion. Just call it duty. You protect with fierce love. Just name it honor. You're not emotionless. You're emotional addicts in denial. That's not true. Then why are you really here? Varys, why take command of a ship assigned to human space? Why study our chaotic little world? I pressed on before she could deflect. Because part of you recognized what you were missing. Part of you was already reaching for what I'm offering, the chance to be whole. She was silent for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was different, younger, somehow, less guarded. My mother died when I was 12 cycles. Training accident. They said, honorable death. No tears allowed at the ceremony. Of course. Just salutes and silence. She touched the rank insignia on her collar. That night, I found her personal effects, hidden in a false panel. Poems. She wrote poems. Beautiful, aching things about love and loss, and the weight of armor we can never remove. What did you do? Burned them. What else could I do if anyone had found them? Her memory would have been destroyed. Her name struck from records. My family shamed. Her hand clenched. But I memorized every word first, every metaphor, every confession of the woman she really was beneath the uniform. She sounds incredible. She was weak. By every standard of our society. She was fatally flawed. Varys looked up at me. And she was the strongest person I ever knew. Strong enough to carry that secret her entire life. strong enough to raise 3 daughters in a culture that would have destroyed her for writing those words, strong enough to die with her mask intact, but not strong enough to live without it. No, the word was barely a whisper. Not that strong. You could be. I could die trying. Or you could live succeeding. I reached across the desk, not quite touching her hand. Varys, tomorrow you face that tribunal. You can try to prove you're still the perfect Corthari general, despite a moment of emotion. Or you can stand up and say your mother's death was a tragedy not because she died, but because she lived her whole life in hiding. They'll destroy me. Maybe. Or maybe there are others out there with hidden poems, hidden laughter, hidden tears. Maybe you're not as alone as you think. She looked at my hand, so close to hers. In human terms, it was nothing. In Corthari culture, it was an earthquake. Slowly, deliberately. She moved her hand until our fingers touched. The contact lasted maybe 2 seconds. Then she pulled back, mask slamming back into place. But something fundamental had shifted. I need to prepare, she said. All business again. The tribunal convenes at 800. If you're going to assist me, you'll need to understand the procedures. Commander Nex will brief you on proper protocols. Varys. That's General Tell to you. Mr. Durrell. But there was warmth in the correction. And if you ever tell anyone about my mother, I'll take it to my grave. See that you do. She reactivated the door controls. Now, get out of my ready room before I throw something heavier than a data pad. I headed for the door, then paused. For what it's worth, I think your mother would be proud of you. Whatever you decide tomorrow. She'd be horrified, absolutely horrified. A ghost of a smile. And then she'd write a poem about it. As the guards escorted me back to my quarters, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd just witnessed something monumental. Not just a woman deciding to fight for her career, but a soul preparing to fight for its freedom. Tomorrow, Varys Tell would stand before the Corthari tribunal. She would face General Merrick Kern and centuries of tradition. And if I had anything to say about it, she would win. Because chaos, real chaos, isn't about destruction. It's about breaking down walls so something new can grow. And the Corthari were long overdue for some gardening. You're adorable when angry. Chapter 3. The tribunal chamber was a masterpiece of intimidation, carved from a single asteroid. Its walls were polished obsidian that reflected and distorted everything, making the space feel both infinite and claustrophobic. 7 raised platforms held the tribunal judges, their faces hidden behind ceremonial masks that displayed only glowing purple eyes. At the center, on the highest platform, sat Admiral Thessa Ral, supreme arbiter of Corthari military justice. I stood in the observer section with the other diplomatic witnesses, trying not to fidget in my formal attire. The Corthari had insisted on dressing me in their style, a high-collared jacket that felt like wearing a straitjacket made of propriety. Around me, hundreds of officers sat in perfect silence, their attention fixed on the empty floor below. The accused will enter. Admiral Ral's voice echoed through the chamber, artificially amplified to sound like the pronouncement of a god. Varys entered alone, as tradition demanded. She wore her dress uniform, every metal polished, every crease perfect. But I knew her well enough now to see the tension in her shoulders, the careful control in her stride. She took her position at the defendant's circle, a spot of white light in the black floor. The challenger will enter. General Merrick Kern strode in like he owned the universe. Where Varys was controlled tension, he was relaxed confidence. His scarred face wore what might have been a smile on anyone else. On him, it looked like a wound. Star General Varys Tell, Admiral Ral began. You stand accused of emotional deviation, conduct unbecoming a superior officer, and contamination by alien influence. General Merrick Kern has invoked the right of judgment. How do you answer? I invoke Talvar, Varas said, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber. Trial by philosophical combat. A ripple went through the assembled officers. Even through their trained composure, I could sense their shock. Talvar hadn't been invoked in over a century. Talvar is your right, Admiral Raoul acknowledged. But know that should you fail, the sentence is not merely removal from command, it is complete erasure. Your name, your deeds, your very existence will be struck from all records. Do you understand? I understand. Does the challenger accept? Merrick's smile widened. With pleasure. Then let the combat begin. General Kern, as challenger, you will present first. Merrick moved to the center of the floor, and the lights dimmed, except for a spotlight that followed him. When he spoke, his voice was honey poured over broken glass. Honored judges, esteemed officers, guardians of our great civilization, I come before you not as an individual, but as a voice for the countless billions who depend on our strength, who trust in our discipline, who sleep peacefully, knowing that we stand between them and the chaos of the universe. He began to pace, each step measured and deliberate. For 1,000 cycles, we have been the anchor of stability in a galaxy gone mad. When the hegemony wars threatened to consume entire sectors, who restored order? When the machine uprising nearly ended biological life, who stood firm when species after species fell to their own emotional excesses, who remained pure? We did, the Korthari, not because we are without feeling, but because we choose duty over desire, logic over impulse, the many over the self. He turned to face Varys directly. And now, we face a new threat, not from without, but from within. A contamination that spreads not through violence, but through weakness disguised as strength. The humans, with their chaos worship, their emotional incontinence, their dangerous belief that feeling is more important than thinking. But the humans are not on trial here. One of our own is. One who has risen to the highest ranks of our military. One who was trusted with our most sacred duties. And how does she repay that trust? The lights suddenly blazed, and a hologram appeared above us. The bridge scene, captured in perfect clarity. Me, smiling like an idiot. Varys, blushing like a schoolgirl. The moment of her complete loss of control, played in slow motion for all to see. She blushes, Merrick said, the word dripping with contempt. In front of her crew, in front of recording devices, in front of the universe, our star general, reduced to a giggling child by 5 words from an alien who treats diplomacy like a comedy routine. The recording played again, and again, each loop making Varys's moment of vulnerability seem more damning. But this is not about one moment, Merrick continued. This is about what that moment represents. The beginning of our end. The first crack in a dam that has held back the flood of chaos for millennia. He gestured to the assembly. How many of you have noticed the changes, the decreased efficiency, the whispered conversations, the questions that should never be asked, all from one moment of weakness? Imagine what would happen if we normalized such behavior. Imagine a Korthari military where officers giggle at compliments, where soldiers prioritize their feelings over their duties, where the chain of command becomes a suggestion rather than sacred law. I have seen civilizations fall to this poison. The Melodians, once a proud warrior culture, now spend their days composing symphonies while their borders crumble. The Quillari, whose mathematics once shaped the cosmos, now waste their genius on interpretive equations that prioritize beauty over truth. And countless others, all seduced by the human plague of emotional authenticity. He stopped directly in front of Varys. General Tell is not evil. She is not malicious. She is sick, infected by prolonged exposure to human chaos. And like any infection, if left untreated, it will spread. It will consume. It will destroy everything we have built. The cure is simple, painful, but simple. We must cut out the infection before it spreads. We must reaffirm our commitment to logic, to order, to the principles that have made us strong. We must show the galaxy that the Korthari will not bend, will not break, will not blush. He returned to his position, bowing to the judges. I have spoken truth. Let she who would challenge it step forward and be judged. The silence that followed was absolute. Even I had to admit it was a masterful performance. He'd taken every fear, every prejudice, every whispered concern, and given them voice. He'd made emotion sound like extinction. Varus stepped forward, and I held my breath. Everything depended on what happened next. General Kern speaks of infection, she began, her voice steady. He is correct, but he has misidentified both the disease and the cure. She touched a control on her wrist, and new holograms appeared. Not of her, but of data, charts, graphs, statistics. Korthari birth rates, she said simply. Declining for 200 cycles. Suicide rates, increasing by 12% per generation. Creative output, non-existent for the past century. Patent applications, 0. Artistic exhibitions, 0. New philosophical works, 0. The data hung in the air, undeniable in its implications. We are not infected by emotion. We are dying from its absence. We have become so perfect in our logic, so pure in our purpose, that we have forgotten why we exist in the first place. She began to move, not with Merrick's calculated steps, but with something more natural, more alive. General Kern asks you to remember our victories. I ask you to remember our losses. Not the battles, we rarely lose those, but the people. How many of our best and brightest have chosen the logical path of self-termination, rather than live one more day in a world without feeling? How many poems will never be written? How many songs never sung? How many loves never confessed? My mother, she paused, and I saw several officers shift uncomfortably. Personal revelation was almost taboo. My mother wrote poetry, in secret, in shame. Words of such beauty they could crack the armor around your heart. But she burned them all, rather than risk discovery. She died with her truth unspoken, her gift ungiven, her soul unexpressed. That is not strength, that is tragedy. She turned to face Merrick. You speak of other species as cautionary tales. I see them as success stories. The Melodian symphonies have brought peace to systems our weapons could only destroy. The Quillari's beautiful mathematics have solved problems our cold logic could not approach. They evolved. We calcified. But the humans, she smiled, and I saw Merrick stiffen. The humans are not our infection. They are our mirror. They show us what we could be if we had the courage to feel, to fail, to try again, to laugh at our mistakes instead of hiding them, to blush at compliments instead of calculating optimal responses. The bridge recording played again, but this time Varus provided commentary. Yes, I blushed. Do you know why? Not because I lost control, but because for one moment, I remembered I was alive. For one instant, I felt joy. Simple, uncomplicated, unauthorized joy. And the galaxy didn't end. The ship didn't explode. My crew didn't mutiny. They just wondered what else they might be missing. Wondered if perhaps there was more to life than duty and death. She pulled up new images, messages, hundreds of them, scrolling too fast to read. These are the private communications I've received since that moment. Not condemnations, I've received those too, but confessions. A weapons officer who hasn't seen her daughter smile in 10 years because showing happiness is weakness. A navigator who dreams in colors but can only speak in numbers. An engineer who invented a new form of poetry but hides it like contraband. We are not sick with emotion. We are starving for it. Merrick stepped forward, breaking protocol. Pretty words from a compromised officer, but words don't change reality. Order creates civilization. Chaos destroys it. Does it? Varas pulled up historical records. The logic wars, which General Kern cites as proof of emotion's danger, killed 3 billion. But do you know what ended them? Not superior firepower, not better strategy, but a single moment of emotional breakthrough. General Taven Ross, watching his enemies burn, suddenly remembered his sister served on one of those ships. He wept, in public, in front of both armies. And that moment of genuine grief did what a decade of warfare couldn't. It made both sides remember they were people, not just soldiers. But we learned the wrong lesson. Instead of understanding that emotion ended the war, we blamed it for starting it. We built a civilization on fear of feeling, not understanding that fear is itself an emotion. We just renamed it logical caution. She moved to the center of the floor, standing where the light was brightest. I stand before you accused of contamination by human influence. I plead guilty, but I also plead necessary, because what the humans bring isn't chaos, it's choice. The choice to laugh or cry, to love or grieve, to be whole instead of hollowed out. General Kern fears a military where officers giggle at compliments. I dream of one where they do, where a moment of joy doesn't end careers, but starts conversations, where strength includes vulnerability, not just invulnerability, where we fight, not because we feel nothing, but because we feel everything and choose to protect it. She looked directly at the judges. You can erase me. Strike my name from every record. Delete my victories. Pretend I never existed. But you cannot erase the questions I've raised. You cannot delete the feelings already stirring in the hearts of those watching. You cannot pretend forever that we are machines when every fiber of our being screams that we are alive. I blushed. I felt joy. I touched a human's hand and didn't die of contamination. I discovered my mother's poetry and didn't report it. I stand here telling you that everything we've been taught about emotion is a lie, wrapped in fear, wrapped in tradition. And I am not sorry, because I would rather be erased as myself than preserved as a lie. She stepped back, and the chamber erupted. Not in chaos. Korthari didn't do chaos, but in something worse. Whispers. Hundreds of trained officers, breaking protocol to whisper to each other. Some in shock, some in anger, but some in recognition. Admiral Rao raised a hand, and silence fell like a hammer. The combat will continue. General Kern, your response. Merrick took the floor again, but something had changed. The easy confidence was gone, replaced by cold fury. Touching, he said. The compromised officer gives us poetry and sentiment. Shall I give you reality computer, display incident report, Theta 7 Alpha? New holograms appeared. A Korthari colony, burning. Ships torn apart. Bodies floating in the void. Nellis Prime. 8 years ago, a Korthari commander fell in love with a human traitor, allowed emotion to cloud judgment, lowered defensive shields for a romantic rendezvous. Pirates attacked. 3,000 dead. An entire colony lost because one officer chose feeling over duty. More images, more death, more destruction. The Harvax incident. A Korthari scientist, inspired by human creative thinking, modified a containment protocol. The resulting breach killed everyone in the facility. Their last recording laughter. They were laughing as exotic matter consumed them. The Drift Rebellion. Korthari workers, infected by human notions of individual expression, refused standardized assignments. The resulting inefficiencies caused food shortages. Thousands starved while the rebels wrote manifestos about their feelings. He turned to the assembly. This is not theory. This is history. Recent history. Every time we allow emotion to override logic, people die. Every time we choose feeling over thinking, chaos wins. General Tell speaks of her mother's poetry. I speak of the children who starved because someone thought beauty was more important than duty. But let us examine the general's true argument. She claims we are dying. that our birth rates decline and our creativity stagnates. I say we are evolving, moving beyond the biological imperative to reproduce wildly, transcending the need for frivolous art, approaching a state of pure thought, pure purpose, pure efficiency. Other species create and procreate because they must fill the void inside them. We have no void. We have purpose. Other species fear death because they have not lived meaningfully. We embrace it because every moment has been spent in service to something greater than ourselves. He pulled up his own data. Korthari military effectiveness has increased by 300% over the last millennium. Our technology advances steadily. Our territory expands. Our influence grows. By every objective measure, we are succeeding. Only when we apply the subjective, emotional metrics of other species do we appear to be failing. General Tell touched a human's hand and felt joy. I have touched the hands of the dying and felt purpose. She sees our tradition as a prison. I see it as armor. She offers you chaos disguised as choice. I offer you continued existence. The human in question sits among us. Look at him. Study him. In the brief time he has been aboard, efficiency has dropped, discipline has wavered, and our highest officer has been reduced to talking about her feelings in public. This is not evolution. This is degradation. He moved to his final position. The choice before you is simple. Embrace emotion and watch our civilization crumble, like so many before us. Or reaffirm our commitment to logic and continue our march toward perfection. General Tell is not evil. She is not malicious. She is simply wrong, dangerously, contagiously wrong. And in matters of survival, being wrong is the only unforgivable sin. He bowed and stepped back. The judges conferred silently, their masked faces giving nothing away. Admiral Rao stood. Both arguments have been heard. By law, each party may call one witness to support their position. General Tell, do you wish to call a witness? Varus turned and looked directly at me. I call Cultural Attaché Calendurel of Earth. The chamber erupted again. An alien witness in a Talvar trial was unprecedented. Several officers stood in protest. Merrick's scarred face twisted into something that might have been rage or satisfaction. Order, Admiral Rao commanded. The law permits any witness who has relevant testimony. Calendurel, approach. I made my way to the floor, feeling the weight of hundreds of eyes on me. Some hostile, some curious, some hopeful. I took my position next to Varus, close enough to see the micro-expressions on her face. The tiny smile, the slight relaxation of her shoulders, the way her hand moved just slightly toward mine before she caught herself. State your name and position for the record, Admiral Rao commanded. Calendurel, Cultural Attaché, Earth Diplomatic Corps, currently assigned to, well, I suppose causing trouble would be the most accurate description. A few officers actually chuckled before catching themselves. Merrick's expression darkened further. You understand that as an alien, your testimony carries less weight than a Korthari citizen. I understand that as a human, my very existence is apparently a threat to your civilization, which, honestly, is the highest compliment anyone's ever paid my species. Do you have relevant testimony regarding the matter at hand? I looked at Varus, then at Merrick, then up at the judges. I have a question first, if I may, for General Kern. This is irregular, Merrick began. So is an alien witness, Admiral Rao interrupted. Ask your question. General Kern, in your presentation, you showed 3 incidents where emotion led to tragedy. How many Korthari operations occurred during that same period? He frowned. Approximately 12,000 military actions, 40,000 commercial ventures, and countless civilian activities. And these 3 incidents represent what percentage of that total? That's not... It's math, pure logic. What percentage? His jaw tightened. Approximately 0.001%. So 99.99999% of the time. Korthari maintain perfect control. Only in 0.001% of cases does emotion cause problems. By your own logic, shouldn't we focus on the overwhelming success rate rather than the statistical anomalies? Those anomalies killed thousands. And how many has your perfect logic killed? I pulled out my own data pad. The suppression of gamma sector, 40 million dead because the logical solution to a food shortage was population reduction. The efficiency purges, 12 million eliminated because they scored below optimal on productivity assessments. Those were necessary sacrifices for the greater good, Merrick interrupted. Were they? Or were they the actions of a civilization so afraid of feeling that it's forgotten the value of life? I turned to the judges. You want to know what humans offer perspective. The ability to see that you've been so focused on avoiding the 0.01% chance of emotional disaster that you're committing logical atrocities on a mass scale. But that's not why I'm here. I'm here because 3 days ago, I made a joke. A stupid, inappropriate, completely human joke. And in response, I saw something magnificent. I looked at Varys. I saw one of the strongest people in the galaxy discover she was even stronger than she knew. Strong enough to feel. Strong enough to be vulnerable. Strong enough to stand here and risk everything for the truth. General Kern warns you about contamination. He's right. But we're not contaminating you with weakness. We're contaminating you with possibility. The possibility that you can be more than perfect soldiers. That you can be complete beings. I pulled up my final image. It wasn't data or statistics. It was a photo. Varys, in that moment on the bridge, blushing. Look at her. Really look. Not at the breach of protocol or the loss of control. Look at the woman underneath. See the joy trying to break through. See the life demanding to be lived. That's not contamination. That's awakening. I've been on this ship for 3 days. In that time, I've seen a cultural analyst question her assumptions. I've seen a commander remember her sister's laughter. I've seen crew members dare to whisper about their dreams. And yes, I've seen chaos. But it's the chaos of spring breaking through winter. The chaos of birth, not death. General Kern offers you continued existence. General Tell offers you actual life. The choice seems obvious to me. But then again, I'm just a chaotic human who makes inappropriate jokes and doesn't know when to shut up. I turned to Merrick. You asked them to look at me and see degradation. I asked them to look at themselves and see potential. To imagine a Korthari civilization that creates as well as conquers. That loves as fiercely as it fights. That embraces the full spectrum of existence instead of cowering in the gray safety of logic. That's my testimony. That's my contamination. That's my gift to you, whether you want it or not. I smiled at Varys. Also, for the record, she's still adorable when she's angry. This time, she didn't blush. She laughed. It was quiet. Barely more than a breath. But in that chamber, it might as well have been an explosion. Star General Varys Tell, terror of 3 sectors, had laughed in public, at a human joke, during her own trial. The silence that followed was deafening. Then, from somewhere in the upper tiers, came another sound. Slow, deliberate, but unmistakable. Applause. A single officer, clapping. Then another, then 5, then 20. Not the majority. Not even close. But enough. Enough to show that the ice was cracking. Enough to prove that some were ready for spring. Admiral Rao raised her hand, and the applause died. General Kern, do you wish to call a witness? No witness could undo what we have seen here today, he said coldly. The general has made my argument for me. She laughs during a trial that will determine her existence. She proves herself unfit with every breath. I need no witness to confirm the obvious. Very well. The tribunal will now deliberate. Guards, escort all parties to the waiting chambers. As we were led away, I managed to walk close to Varys. How are you feeling? Terrified, she admitted. Exhilarated. Confused. Alive. She glanced at me. Is this what humans feel all the time? Pretty much. You get used to it. I'm not sure I want to get used to it. It's... She searched for words. Intense. That's the point. Life is supposed to be intense. It's supposed to matter. It's supposed to make you feel things that don't fit in neat categories. We reached the waiting chambers, small rooms where we would await the verdict. Merrick was led to one, Varys to another. I was about to be taken to the observers area when Varys spoke. He stays with me, she said to the guards. As my witness, he has the right to await the verdict at my side. The guards looked uncertain but didn't argue. We entered the chamber together, and the door sealed behind us. The room was small, sterile, with 2 chairs and nothing else. We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of what had just happened settling over us. I'm going to lose, she said finally. You know that, right? The tribunal is composed of 7 senior officers. At least 5 are traditionalists. The math is simple. Since when has this been about math? Since always. That's the Corthari way. She leaned back, closing her eyes. But you're right. This stopped being about math the moment I laughed. Now it's about something else. Something harder to quantify. Hope? Change? She opened her eyes, looked at me. Even if they erase me, they can't erase what happened today. The questions raised, the emotions stirred, the applause. A smile ghosted across her face. Did you hear it? Actual applause. In a tribunal chamber. It's like seeing a supernova in your living room. You did that, not me. We did that. She was quiet for a moment. What will you do after? That depends on the verdict. No, it doesn't. If they rule against me, you'll be expelled from Corthari space. If they rule for me, she shrugged. I have no idea what happens then. Either way, your time here is limited. Then I guess we better make the most of it. She looked at me. Really looked. And for a moment all the masks were gone. That day on the bridge, when you said I was adorable, did you mean it? Every word. Why I'm a product of a repressive culture. I've spent 50 cycles suppressing everything that makes life worth living. I've ordered actions that would horrify your peaceful earth sensibilities. Why would you find anything about me adorable? I thought about it. Really thought. Because underneath all of that, you're fighting to break free. Because you carry your mother's poems in your heart. Because you stood up today and told the truth, even though it might cost you everything. Because you're strong enough to be vulnerable and brave enough to laugh in a room full of judges. Because you're trying so hard to be human in a culture that forbids it. I'm not trying to be human. I'm trying to be Corthari. Just a different kind. A better kind. A complete kind. She stood, pacing the small room. Do you know what the worst part is? The waiting? In battle. You act or react. Here, you just exist in uncertainty. Very un-Corthari. Very human, though. Everything's human to you. Because everything is love, fear, hope, despair, joy, anger. These aren't human emotions. They're universal. We just don't hide from them. The door chimed. Too soon. Far too soon. A guard's voice came through the speaker. The tribunal has reached a verdict. We looked at each other. This was it. The moment that would define everything. Whatever happens, I said. I want you to know something. These 3 days getting thrown in a cell, threatened with execution, forced to wear this ridiculous outfit worth it. All of it. Just to see you smile. Just to hear you laugh. Just to watch you remember who you really are. She moved closer. Close enough that I could see the flecks of silver in her purple eyes. Callan Jarrell of Earth. You are, without question, the most disruptive force I have ever encountered. Thank you. It wasn't a compliment. It wasn't not a compliment either. She laughed again, soft and real. How do you do that? Find humor even now. Because the alternative is paralysis. And because I reached out, slowly, giving her time to pull away. She didn't. My hand found hers, fingers intertwining in a gesture that would have meant death days ago. Because this moment, right here, is perfect. Whatever comes next can't change that. The door opened. The guard stood ready. The walk back to the tribunal chamber felt both endless and far too short. Everyone was already assembled. The judges on their platforms, Merrick in his position, the hundreds of officers in their seats, all waiting for words that would either end Veristel or transform Korthari society. We took our positions. I stayed close to Varys, probably closer than protocol allowed, but nobody corrected me. All eyes were on Admiral Raoul as she stood. The tribunal has deliberated. The arguments have been weighed. The evidence has been examined. In the matter of the right of judgment between General Merrick Kern and Star General Veristel, we have reached our verdict. She paused, and I swear the entire ship held its breath. By a vote of 4-3, you're adorable when angry. Chapter 4. By a vote of 4-3, the tribunal finds in favor of General Merrick Kern. The words hit like a physical blow. I felt Vera stiffen beside me, her face becoming a mask of perfect composure, even as her world crumbled. Around us, the chamber erupted in whispers, quickly suppressed but unmistakably present. However, Admiral Raoul continued, and the single word froze everyone in place. The tribunal also notes unprecedented irregularities in this proceeding. The margin of victory is the narrowest in our history. 3 judges, myself included, voted against the traditional interpretation. This represents a fundamental schism in our understanding of Korthari values. Merrick stepped forward, triumph twisting his scarred features. The law is clear. The verdict has been rendered. I call for immediate execution of sentence. The law is indeed clear, Admiral Raoul agreed. But so is precedent. When a Talvar verdict reveals such division, the matter must be elevated to the Matriarch Council. Until they rule, the sentence is suspended. That's not, Merrick began. Are you challenging my interpretation of the law? General? The Admiral's voice could have frozen plasma. Perhaps you'd like to invoke another right of judgment? Merrick's jaw worked silently before he managed a rigid, No, Admiral. Then we are adjourned. Star General Tell, you remain in command pending the Council's decision. Your witness is no longer required to be confined. This tribunal is dissolved. The judges filed out, leaving chaos in their wake. Officers clustered in groups, voices raised in unprecedented debate. Some shot hostile glances at Varys and me. Others looked thoughtful. A few even nodded respectfully as we passed. Commander Nex met us at the exit, her face carefully neutral. General, I've prepared a secure route to your quarters. Unnecessary, Varys said. We'll take the main corridor. General, given the circumstances. We'll take the main corridor. Commander, I won't skulk through my own ship like a criminal. So we walked through the heart of the Vyrexia, past hundreds of crew members who had just watched their commanding officer narrowly escape erasure for the crime of being human. Some turned away, some stared, but more than I expected, offered subtle gestures of support, a hand placed over heart, a slight bow, a flash of something that might have been sympathy in their eyes. When we finally reached Varas's quarters, she dismissed Nex and sealed the door behind us. For a long moment, she stood perfectly still, staring at nothing. Then, without warning, she drove her fist into the wall. The impact left a dent in the reinforced metal and probably fractured several bones in her hand. She didn't make a sound. That was stupid, she said conversationally, examining her damaged knuckles. That was human, I corrected, moving to the medical kit mounted on the wall. Same thing, apparently. She let me take her hand, didn't protest as I ran the regenerator over the brakes. I lost. You survived. Temporarily. The council will review the case, find no legal basis to overturn the verdict, and order my erasure. I've bought myself perhaps a month. Maybe 2 if they're particularly busy with other matters. A lot can happen in a month. Like what a miracle. A revolution. The sudden transformation of a millennium-old culture. She pulled her hand back, flexing the newly healed fingers. I was a fool to think words could change anything. 3 judges voted for you. That's never happened before. 3 out of 7. Still a minority, still a loss. I studied her face, seeing past the mask to the exhaustion underneath. What were their names? What? The judges who voted for you. Who were they? She frowned, considering. Admiral Rao, obviously. Judge Advocate Maris Cole, she's younger, more progressive. And Senator Jarek Thon. Jarek is a male name. The Senate allows male representatives, though they rarely speak. A ghost of a smile crossed her face. But he spoke today, voted today, risked everything today. For you, for the idea I represented, for the possibility of change. She moved to her viewport, gazing out at the stars. Do you know what he said to me after privately? In the secure corridor, he said his son writes music. Has for years. Beautiful, complex compositions that he's never dared share with anyone. He said he voted for the future where his son could play those songs in public. See, change is already happening. Too slow. Too late. She turned back to me. You should request transfer. Today. Before the council convenes and finds you guilty of corrupting a senior officer. No. Kaylin. No. I'm not leaving. Not unless you order me to. And maybe not even then. I joined her at the viewport. You asked me what I'd do after. This is what I'm doing. Standing with you. Fighting with you. For as long as we have. Even if it's hopeless. Especially if it's hopeless. That's when standing together matters most. She was quiet for a long time, watching stars wheel past. My mother would have liked you, she said finally. She had a weakness for impossible causes and inappropriate humor. Tell me about her. Really tell me. Not the officer she pretended to be, but the woman who wrote poetry. Varus moved to a wall panel I hadn't noticed before, pressing her palm against it. A hidden compartment opened, revealing a small box. She retrieved it carefully, like it might shatter at a touch. I saved one, she said, opening the box to reveal a single sheet of polymer paper covered in flowing script. Just one. The last thing she ever wrote. She handed it to me. The writing was in Korthari, of course. But below it, someone Varus, I realized had added a translation in Standard. The armor grows heavier each day, though its weight remains the same. I carry generations of silence, each link forged from another's shame. My daughter watches me with questions I am not permitted to answer. She sees strength where I feel nothing, mistakes, emptiness for grandeur. One day she too will don this metal, polish it until it gleams, and I will watch her light diminish as she locks away her dreams. But perhaps forgive this mother's madness. Perhaps her child will be the one to finally break these ancient shackles and dance freely in the sun. I read it twice, feeling the weight of every word. She knew. She saw what was happening and couldn't stop it. Couldn't or wouldn't. The result is the same. Varus took the poem back, holding it like a sacred relic. I used to think she was weak for feeling so much. Now I know she was strong for feeling it all. You're stronger. You're doing what she couldn't. You're breaking the shackles. Am I? Or am I just dying more dramatically? She returned the poem to its hiding place. Tomorrow, word of the verdict will reach every Korthari world. Some will see it as a narrow escape from contamination. Others as proof that our system is breaking down. Either way, unrest follows. Good. Unrest means people are thinking. Unrest means people are dying. Merrick won't wait idly for the council to convene. He'll consolidate power, purge suspected sympathizers, ensure that by the time the final verdict comes, there's no one left to mourn my erasure. A chime at the door interrupted us. Varys checked the security feed and frowned. Kira Vell, and she's not alone. The door opened to reveal not just the young cultural analyst but a dozen other officers of various ranks. They filed in silently, forming a loose semicircle. I recognized Commander Nex among them, and was surprised to see several senior staff members I hadn't expected. General, Kira spoke for the group. We need to talk about what happens next. What happens next is you all return to your post before someone reports an unauthorized assembly, Varys said coldly. With respect. General, no. This from an older officer bearing Science Division insignia. We've spent the last hour in emergency session. What happened in that tribunal? It changes things. It changes nothing. The verdict was clear. The vote was 4-3. Commander Nex stepped forward. Do you understand what that means? Not legally, but culturally. For the first time in our history, traditional orthodoxy won by a single vote. The foundation is cracking. And you want to, help it crack faster? That's treason. Commander? So was your mother's poetry, Kira said quietly. So was Senator Thon's vote. So was Admiral Raoul's smile when she announced the delay. We're already traitors, General. The question is whether we're brave enough to admit it. Varys studied them. These officers who had served under her with perfect discipline, now standing in her quarters talking revolution. What are you proposing? A study group, said the science officer Terrace Nall. I remembered. Officially, a committee to analyze the efficiency drops and recommend solutions. Unofficially, a revolution in slow motion. Another officer finished. We change things gradually, introduce small freedoms, normalize minor emotional expressions, make the unthinkable become inevitable. Merrick will see through it immediately. Let him, Nex said. What's he going to do? Execute half the officer corps for insufficient emotional suppression. He needs us functional, more than he needs us pure. You're all taking an enormous risk, Varys said. If I'm erased, everyone associated with me becomes suspect. We're taking the only risk worth taking, Kira replied. The risk of living before we die. I watched Varys process this, saw the war between her training and her hope. Finally, she nodded. Very well, but we do this carefully. No grand gestures, no public declarations. We become what the humans call a fifth column. We work within the system to change the system. Agreed, Nex said. Though we'll need guidelines. Specific behaviors we're normalizing, boundaries we're pushing. I can help with that, I offered. Cultural contamination is apparently my specialty. Several officers actually smiled at that. Smiled. In a revolution planning meeting. The first thing we need to address, Terrace Nall said, is the creative suppression. I've run models on our technological stagnation. We're not just failing to innovate. We're losing the ability to innovate. Within 50 years, we'll be unable to maintain our current technology, let alone improve it. Because innovation requires risk-taking, I said, and risk-taking is emotional. Precisely. So we start there. Small creative projects, music, art, literature. Nothing official. Nothing that can be traced back to us. Just permission to think differently. What about Merrick? Varys asked. He'll be watching for exactly this kind of organization. Then we give him what he expects to see. A tactical officer suggested. Increased efficiency drills, stricter protocols, all the surface markers of a return to orthodoxy. Meanwhile, we teach people to feel again, Kira finished. One small rebellion at a time. They stayed for another hour, planning their quiet revolution. I watched Varas transform from condemned woman to resistance leader, saw hope kindle in her eyes as her officers, her friends, really chose to stand with her. After they left, we sat in comfortable silence. Finally, Varys spoke. "This is insane. Sanity is overrated. We're planning to subvert a 1,000-year-old culture with study groups and art projects. You're planning to save your species with courage and compassion. The study groups are just logistics." She looked at me, really looked, and I saw something new in her expression. Not just gratitude or affection, but possibility. "You did this, somehow, with your ridiculous jokes and your refusal to follow protocol. You started an avalanche. I made one comment about you being adorable. You did everything else." "That one comment," she shook her head. "Do you know I've replayed that moment 1,000 times, trying to understand why it affected me so deeply? And because it was honest, pure, simple, emotional honesty. No calculation, no strategy, just truth. I'd forgotten what that felt like." "How does it feel now?" "Terrifying, exhilarating, like standing on the edge of a cliff and realizing I can fly." She paused. "Is that a normal human emotion?" "That's called falling in love," I said without thinking, then immediately wished I could take it back. Too much. Too fast. Too. "Yes," she said simply. "I suppose it is." The silence that followed was different, charged, full of possibilities we couldn't quite name yet. "I should go," I said finally. "Let you rest. Tomorrow will be complicated." "Stay." The word was barely above a whisper. Not like that. Just stay. I don't want to be alone with my thoughts tonight." So I stayed. We talked about everything and nothing. She told me about her first command, how she'd been so terrified of showing weakness that she didn't sleep for a week. I told her about Earth, about cities where a dozen cultures mixed freely, where chaos and creation were the same thing. "Do you miss it?" she asked, as the ship's night cycle deepened. "Earth, sometimes. But mostly I miss the idea of it, the freedom to be myself without apology." "You seem pretty unapologetic here." "It's a work in progress." I studied her profile in the starlight. "What about you? What do you miss?" "I miss who I might have been, if I'd been born somewhere else. Someone else." She turned to me. "Is that strange, missing a self that never existed?" "That's the most human thing you've said yet." "I'm trying to take that as a compliment." "You should. Humanity isn't a species. It's a choice. The choice to feel deeply, love freely, and hope stupidly in the face of overwhelming odds." "Then I choose to be human," she said softly. "For however long I have left." "We choose," I corrected. "We're in this together now." "Together." She tested the word like a new language. I like the sound of that. Eventually, exhaustion claimed us both. I woke to find her asleep in her chair, one hand resting near mine, not quite touching but close enough to feel the warmth. Her face in sleep had lost all its masks, revealing the woman underneath vulnerable, beautiful, achingly real. The door chime woke her. She was instantly alert, checking the time. "Those 600, shift change." She looked at me, seemed to realize how the situation might appear, and for the first time, I saw her genuinely flustered. You should probably." "Right. Yes. Going." I stood, straightening my rumpled clothes. "Thank you for trusting me, for letting me stay. Thank you for giving me a reason to—" I was almost to the door when she called my name, Callan.
Yeah,
"Whatever happens next, however this ends, I'm glad you said it, that I was adorable when angry. I'm glad you saw me, even when I couldn't see myself." "You're still adorable," I said, "especially when you're plotting revolution." This time, her laugh was full and genuine. "Get out of here before I throw something heavier than a data pad." I left her quarters with that laugh echoing in my ears. Stepped into a corridor that looked exactly the same as yesterday, but felt entirely different. Because now, it wasn't just a ship full of perfect soldiers. It was a ship full of people pretending to be perfect soldiers, while secretly learning how to be human. The revolution had begun, not with weapons or declarations, but with a laugh, a poem, and the radical idea that feeling deeply was not a weakness, but the greatest strength of all. Merrick had won the trial, but as I made my way through corridors where officers now met my eyes, instead of looking through me, where tiny acts of rebellion bloomed like flowers through concrete, I knew the truth. He'd already lost the war. The next weeks would be crucial. The matriarch council would convene. Merrick would maneuver. The quiet revolution would either grow or be crushed. But in that moment, walking through a ship transformed by the possibility of change, I felt something I hadn't expected. Hope. Real, stupid, beautiful human hope. And somewhere behind me, in quarters that had become a center of gentle rebellion, a star general who'd forgotten how to smile was learning to laugh. That, more than any military victory, felt like winning. I found Kira Vell in the Cultural Analysis Lab, surrounded by data streams and looking like she hadn't slept. She glanced up as I entered, and I saw the same mix of exhaustion and exhilaration that was probably on my own face. "The efficiency reports from last night are fascinating," she said without preamble. For the first hour after the verdict, productivity dropped to 60%. But then something interesting happened. It stabilized at 85% and has been slowly climbing since. What changed? Purpose. She pulled up a holographic display. When people thought Varys would be immediately erased, they were lost. But once they realized there was time, that things could still change. Look at these communication patterns. Encrypted. But the volume is unprecedented. People aren't just talking, they're organizing. How many? Hard to say. Maybe 15% are actively sympathetic. Another 30% are curious. The rest are either hostile or waiting to see which way the wind blows. She turned to me. But 15% of a military ship's crew is a significant force, especially when it includes department heads and senior officers. What about the other ships in the fleet? Word is spreading. The Korthax and Viridian have already reported minor discipline issues. Nothing actionable, just anomalies. Officers taking slightly longer meal breaks. Maintenance crews humming while they work. Small things. Small things that add up to big changes. Exactly, she paused, studying me. You spent the night with her. It wasn't a question, but I answered anyway. Talking, just talking. I wasn't judging, just observing. She smiled, and it transformed her face. You know, a week ago that would have been a capital offense. Now it's just gossip. Do you understand how revolutionary that is? We're gossiping, like actual people. The horror, I said dryly. You joke, but for us, it is horrifying. And wonderful, and terrifying. We're children learning to walk, and every step might be off a cliff. She pulled up another display. But we're walking anyway. The display showed a poem. Simple, unpolished, but undeniably real. Someone posted this on an anonymous server, she explained. Within an hour, there were dozens more. Poetry, stories, even crude drawings. 1,000 years of suppressed creativity, suddenly pouring out. That's beautiful. That's dangerous. If Merrick traces the server, he won't. The voice from the doorway made us both jump. Commander Nex entered, looking pleased with herself. I've routed it through 17 proxy servers across 3 systems. Even our best cyber warfare specialist would need weeks to track it, and by then, we'll have moved to new servers. You set up the creative server, I asked, surprised. My sister isn't the only one in the family with hidden talents, she said. Though mine run more toward creative network architecture than actual art. That's still art, Kira said. Just a different medium. Nex actually smiled at that. I suppose it is. How strange to think of it that way. She turned serious. We have a problem. Merrick's called an emergency staff meeting for all department heads. Mandatory attendance. He's making his move, I said. Undoubtedly. But we knew he would. The question is how we respond. She looked at me. You're not technically required to attend. But my absence would be noticed. I'll be there.
It could be a trap.
Everything's a trap now. The trick is knowing which ones to spring. An hour later, I sat in the briefing room with 40 of the ship's senior officers, watching General Merrick Kern pace like a predator. He'd chosen his ground well. This room had been the site of countless strategic victories, its walls lined with commendations and battle honors, a reminder of what traditional Korthari values had achieved. Efficiency is down 18%, he began without preamble. Discipline infractions have increased by a factor of 12. There are unconfirmed reports of singing in the lower decks. He said the last word, like it physically pained him. This is the cost of contamination. This is what happens when we allow alien influences to corrupt our purity. One moment of weakness from our commanding officer, and the rot spreads like a plague. Several officers shifted uncomfortably. Others remained stone-faced. The battle lines were being drawn in silence. Fortunately, Merrick continued, the solution is simple. General Tell remains in command pending the Council's review, but effective immediately. I am assuming oversight of all cultural and diplomatic protocols. The human. He gestured at me with barely concealed disgust. Will be confined to quarters when not performing official duties. All non-essential communication is suspended. Any officer found engaging in emotional expression will face immediate disciplinary action. On whose authority? The question came from Terrace Nall, calm but challenging. On the authority of tradition. On the authority of 1,000 years of success. On the authority of sanity in the face of madness. Merrick's scarred face twisted. Unless someone here wishes to formally challenge that authority. Silence. Even our quiet revolutionaries weren't ready for open confrontation. Not yet. Furthermore, he continued, taking their silence for submission. I'm implementing new efficiency protocols. Mandatory logic assessments for all personnel. Anyone scoring below acceptable parameters will be relieved of duty pending remedial training. Define acceptable parameters, Commander Nex said. 0 emotional deviation, 0 creative expression, 0 contamination. He smiled coldly. The standards our ancestors set. The standards that built an empire. The standards that are killing us, someone muttered from the back. Who said that Merrick whirled, searching for the source? Who dares? I said it. Everyone turned as Varys entered the room. She wasn't supposed to be here. Merrick had deliberately scheduled the meeting during her required meditation period. But here she was, in full uniform, radiating an authority that had nothing to do with rank. General Tell, Merrick said stiffly. This is a closed session. Nothing on my ship is closed to me, General Kern, though I appreciate your enthusiasm in assuming otherwise. She moved to the center of the room, and I saw several officers straighten instinctively. Whatever else had happened, she was still their commander. You were saying something about standards that are killing us. Merrick's voice dripped venom. Please, enlighten us with more of your contaminated wisdom. Gladly. She pulled up a holographic display. Birth rates, declining for 200 cycles. Suicide rates, climbing exponentially. Innovation index, flat for a century. These aren't my numbers, General. They're from your own report to High Command last year. Merrick's jaw tightened. Those statistics are classified. Yes, they are. Classified because they reveal an uncomfortable truth. We're dying, General. Not from alien contamination, but from our own rigid adherence to a system that no longer serves us. The system serves perfectly. It's the people who are failing. No. Her voice carried a quiet power that filled the room. The people are surviving despite the system, not because of it. Every one of these officers has found ways to remain sane in an insane culture. Hidden hobbies, private journals, secret dreams. We've all been living double lives because the alternative is no life at all. Speculation and projection. Truth. She looked around the room, meeting each gaze. Who here has never felt joy, never experienced curiosity beyond mission parameters, never wondered what it would be like to laugh freely, love openly, exist completely? No one spoke, but the silence itself was an answer. "We are not machines," she continued. "We are people. Complex, feeling, dreaming people forced to pretend otherwise. And that pretense is killing us faster than any enemy ever could." "Pretty words from a condemned woman," Merrick snarled. "The council will erase you, and this madness ends." "Perhaps. But until then, I remain in command. And as commanding officer, I'm implementing my own protocols." She straightened. "Effective immediately. Efficiency standards will include creative problem-solving metrics. Emotional intelligence will be added to promotion criteria. And any officer who wishes to express themselves through art, music, literature, or simple human connection may do so without fear of reprisal." The room erupted. Some officers protested loudly. Others looked stunned. A few more than I'd expected looked relieved. "This is illegal," Merrick roared. "You can't—" "I can and I have. If you wish to challenge my authority, file a formal complaint with the review board. Until then, my orders stand." She turned to the room. "Anyone who feels uncomfortable with these new protocols may request transfer. No questions asked, no marks on your record. But those who stay will be part of something unprecedented. The evolution of Korthari culture. The birth of something new. The death of everything we are. No, General. The discovery of everything we could be." She moved toward the door, then paused. "Oh, and Mr. Durrell's movement restrictions are lifted. In fact, I'm promoting him to Senior Cultural Advisor. His contamination seems to be exactly what we need." She left, and chaos followed. Officers arguing, shouting. A few even laughing at the absurdity of it all. Merrick stood at the center, his face purple with rage, trying to restore order to a room that had suddenly remembered it was full of people, not programs. I slipped out during the commotion, finding Varys in the corridor. She was leaning against the wall, hands shaking slightly. "That was incredibly brave," I said, "and incredibly dangerous. It was necessary." She looked at me, and I saw fear there, but also determination. "I've accelerated the timeline. Merrick will push for an emergency council session now. We might have days instead of weeks. Then we make those days count." How do you undo 1,000 years of conditioning in a few days?" I thought about it, then smiled. "You don't undo it. You overwrite it with something better, something stronger." "Like what?" "Like hope. Like joy. Like the radical idea that life is worth living fully." I stepped closer. "You just gave them permission to be human. Now we show them how." "I don't know how to be human." "Sure you do. You've been doing it all week, every time you laugh, every time you question, every time you choose feeling over protocol that's human." "Then I've been human since you walked onto my bridge," she smiled, soft and real. "Contamination patient zero. I prefer to think of myself as a catalyst." "You would—" She pushed off the wall, squaring her shoulders. "Come on, Senior Cultural Advisor. Let's go contaminate some more people." The next 3 days were a whirlwind of controlled chaos. The creative server Nex had set up exploded with content poems, stories, songs, confessions of feelings kept buried for decades. The mess hall started serving food with actual flavor after a cook admitted he'd been secretly experimenting with spices. An engineer reprogrammed the corridor lights to cycle through subtle colors instead of harsh white. Small rebellions, tiny freedoms, each one a crack in the dam. Merrick fought back. Of course. He held daily loyalty sessions, mandatory logic drills, tried to reimpose the old order through sheer force of will. But for every officer who attended his sessions, two gathered secretly to share their newest creations, or simply really talk about their lives. On the third night, I found Varys on the observation deck, watching stars wheel past. She'd taken to coming here when the pressure got too much, finding solace in the infinite. "The council convenes tomorrow," she said without turning. "Merrick transmitted his emergency request this morning. They've agreed to expedite the review. Are you ready to argue for my existence, to justify feeling joy?" She laughed, but it was strained. "How does one prepare for that? You don't argue for your existence. You demonstrate it. You show them what you've started here. The creativity, the connection, the life returning to your people. 40% of the crew has participated in some form of emotional expression. That's unprecedented."
It's beautiful.
She turned to me then, and in the starlight, I saw tears on her cheeks. Real tears, unashamed and unhidden. "I'm scared," she whispered. "Not of dying, of failing them. All those people who took the risk to feel again. If I lose tomorrow." "You won't lose."
You can't know that.
"I can—" I reached up, gently wiping away a tear. "Because you've already won. Look what you've done in 3 days. Look at the hope you've kindled. Even if the worst happens, that hope won't die. It'll spread. Ship to ship, world to world. You've started something that can't be stopped."
Revolutions have been stopped before.
"Not this one. This one's different." I smiled. "This one has you." She kissed me then, sudden and fierce and full of everything she'd been holding back. When we finally broke apart, we were both breathless.
That was
"Highly inappropriate, completely against regulations, and absolutely perfect," she finished. "See, I'm learning." We stood there, holding each other, watching the stars that had seen so much and would see so much more. Tomorrow would bring the council, Merrick's accusations, and possibly the end of everything. But tonight, we had this. The warmth of connection, the joy of possibility, the simple, revolutionary act of two people choosing to feel. "Whatever happens tomorrow," Varys said softly, "I want you to know something. These past days, since you walked onto my bridge and turned my world upside down, they've been the most real days of my life. They're just the beginning," I promised. "Trust me, I'm something of an expert on chaos. And this is the good kind. The kind that makes flowers grow. Flowers in the void. Especially in the void. That's where they're needed most." She smiled. That transformative expression that had started it all. "Then let's grow a garden." Tomorrow would come with all its challenges. But tonight, on a ship full of people learning to be human, under stars that had watched 1,000 civilizations rise and fall, we chose hope. And in the end, that choice would change everything. You're Adorable When Angry, Chapter 5. The matriarch council chamber made the tribunal room look welcoming. Carved into the heart of Korthar Prime's largest moon, it was a sphere of pure black crystal that seemed to absorb light itself. 13 ancient thrones arranged in a perfect circle, each occupied by a figure whose very presence radiated centuries of authority. I stood with Varys in the center, feeling very small and very human. Around us, holographic projections showed representatives from every Korthari world, military installation and colony ship. Millions watching, millions waiting to see if their culture would evolve or calcify forever. Star General Varys Tell." The Prime Matriarch's voice seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. She was ancient, even by Korthari standards. Her face a map of scars and wisdom. "You stand before us accused of fundamental deviation from Korthari principles. The lower tribunal found against you by the narrowest margin in our history. We are here to render final judgment." "I understand. Prime Matriarch," Varys replied, her voice steady. "General Merrick Kern, present your case." Merrick stepped forward from the shadows, and I noticed he'd added new decorations to his uniform. Medals for ideological purity, no doubt. He bowed deeply before beginning. "Honored matriarchs, I come before you not as an individual, but as a guardian of our very existence. What you are about to witness is not merely the fall of one officer, but a plague that threatens to unmake everything we are." He gestured, and holograms filled the space. The Virexia's corridors, but different now. Officers smiling, a maintenance tech humming while she worked. Two ensigns, actually holding hands in what they thought was an empty observation lounge. "This is Star General Tell's ship today. In less than 1 week, she has transformed a pinnacle of military efficiency into this emotional chaos. Discipline abandoned. The very foundations of our society crumbling." More images. The creative server's contents displayed for all to see. Poems, songs, confessions of feeling. Each one presented like evidence of a crime. "But the contamination spreads beyond one ship," Merrick continued. "Reports from across the fleet indicate similar anomalies. Officers questioning orders, not on logical grounds, but because they feel wrong. Efficiency dropping as personnel waste time on creative expression. The human virus spreading faster than we can contain it." He turned to face us directly. "And at the center of it all, a Star General who has abandoned her oath, her duty, her very identity as Korthari. Observe." The recording played. Not just the bridge incident this time, but everything after. Varys laughing, Varys crying, Varys kissing me on the observation deck. The security feed somehow captured despite our certainty we were alone. "She weeps," Merrick said with disgust. "She laughs. She engages in physical intimacy with the very alien who corrupted her. This is not a leader. This is a victim of the most insidious invasion our people have ever faced. An invasion not of territory, but of identity itself." He began showing historical examples, civilizations that had fallen after embracing emotion. The same arguments from the tribunal, but refined, sharpened into weapons. The Melodians sing while their infrastructure crumbles. The Quillari create beauty while their population dwindles. Every culture touched by human chaos follows the same pattern, a brief flowering of creativity, followed by inevitable collapse. We are not immune. We are merely the latest target. Some will argue that our birth rates decline, that our innovation stagnates. I say we are achieving our final form, moving beyond the biological, beyond the need for constant change. We are becoming pure thought, pure purpose. Why contaminate that perfection with the chaos of feeling? He pulled up economic projections, military assessments, sociological models, all showing the same thing: emotional expression leading to decreased efficiency, decreased efficiency leading to weakness, weakness leading to extinction. "But there is hope," he said, voice rising. "The contamination can be purged. The deviance can be reconditioned. The human influence can be excised. All we need is the will to act, the courage to remain ourselves in the face of seductive chaos." He looked directly at each matriarch in turn. "You have seen the evidence. You have witnessed the degradation. Now I ask you, will you save our civilization? Or will you let it dissolve into emotional anarchy? Will you choose the proven path of logic, or the treacherous cliff of feeling? Will you remain Korthari? Or will you become human?" The last word dripped with such venom that I actually stepped back. Merrick returned to his position, confident in his performance. He'd given them every reason to fear change, every excuse to cling to tradition. "Star General Tell," the Prime Matriarch said, "present your defense." Varys stepped forward, and I saw something in her posture I hadn't expected. Not defeat or defiance, but peace. Whatever happened, she'd made her choice. I have no defense, she said simply. Gasps echoed through the chamber, both physical and holographic. Even Merrick looked shocked. Everything General Kern has shown you is true, she continued. I have laughed. I have cried. I have felt joy and sorrow and love. I have abandoned the pretense of emotionlessness and embraced the chaos of being truly alive. By every traditional measure, I am guilty of complete contamination. She paused, letting that sink in. But I am not here to defend tradition. I am here to save our people from it. She activated her own holograms, but these weren't statistics or efficiency reports. They were faces, hundreds of them. Junior technician Vera Nis took her own life 3 days before her efficiency review, knowing she would fail because she spent her off hours writing music. Commander Jarek Tal ended himself rather than report his daughter for showing affection in public. Dr. Maris Fall self-terminated after realizing she felt satisfaction from healing rather than just duty. More faces, more names, each one a story of a life cut short by the weight of enforced emotionlessness. These are not statistics. These are people. Our people. Dead because they dared to feel in a culture that demands numbness. How many more must we lose before we admit that the cure has become worse than any disease? She changed the display. Now, it showed her ship, but not the chaos Merrick had highlighted. Instead, the subtle changes, the slightly brighter eyes, the marginally quicker steps, people who looked alive. Yes, efficiency is down 18%, but morale is up 200%. Yes, some regulations have been bent, but no one has died. For the first time in decades, no one on my ship has chosen self-termination over facing another day of emotional suppression. That proves nothing, Merrick interrupted, breaking protocol. Short-term euphoria before the inevitable collapse. Is that what you think this is? Viras turned on him. Euphoria, no, General. This is something far more dangerous. This is hope. She faced the matriarchs again. You want to know what humans really offer, not chaos, not contamination. Proof. Proof that feeling doesn't destroy civilizations, it builds them. Earth produced more art, science, and philosophy in 2 centuries than we have in a millennium. Not despite their emotions, but because of them. Passion drives innovation. Joy rewards discovery. Even grief and anger, properly channeled, become forces for change rather than destruction. We've spent 1,000 years trying to amputate parts of ourselves that were never diseased, just powerful. She pulled up new data. Birth rates on her ship over the past week. A tiny uptick, but the first positive movement in decades. People are choosing life again, choosing to create new life, because suddenly existence seems worth perpetuating. Pretty numbers from a contaminated source, Merrick snarled. Matriarchs. Surely you see. I see clearly. The Prime Matriarch spoke for the first time since presentations began. I see 2 visions of our future. One where we perfect our current path until we achieve the logical endpoint extinction. Another where we risk change for the chance at genuine life. Both terrifying in their own way. She stood, and the chamber seemed to hold its breath. But there is a third consideration, one neither of you has addressed. The human. Every eye turned to me. The weight of that attention was almost physical. Callan Durrell, she continued, you stand accused of being the source of this contamination. Do you deny it? I looked at Varys, saw her minute nod of encouragement. No, Prime Matriarch, I don't deny it, but I do dispute the terminology. Explain. Contamination implies I brought something foreign to your people. I didn't. I simply reminded them of what was already there. Every Korthari who has laughed this week, who has created art, who has chosen joy, they didn't learn those things from me. They remembered them. Semantics, Merrick spat. Truth, I countered. You can't contaminate someone with their own nature. You can only help them rediscover it. And what gives you the right? This from another matriarch, younger, but no less stern. What gives your species the authority to interfere with our evolution? The same thing that gave us the right to help the Zafrani break their cycle of war. The same thing that let us show the collective that individuality and unity could coexist. The recognition that sometimes, from the outside, you can see cages that have become invisible to those within them. Arrogance, Merrick said. Compassion, I replied. We've been where you are. Different cage, same bars. Earth nearly destroyed itself multiple times before we learned that feeling deeply and thinking clearly weren't opposites. They were partners. We're not trying to make you human. We're trying to help you be fully Korthari. Korthari are logical, Merrick began. Korthari are passionate, I interrupted, surprising everyone, including myself. You fight with unmatched fervor. You pursue perfection with obsessive dedication. You love your people so fiercely, you'll sacrifice anything to protect them. Those aren't logical responses, they're emotional ones. You've just renamed them to make them acceptable. I moved to the center of the chamber, drawing on every diplomatic skill I'd ever learned, and a few I was making up on the spot. Your entire culture is built on the biggest emotional decision of all, fear. Fear of returning to the chaos of the logic wars. Fear of losing control. Fear of feeling too much. But fear is just another emotion, and you've let it rule you for 1,000 years. Watch yourself, human, the Prime Matriarch warned. I am watching. I'm watching a species so magnificent, so capable, so full of potential, slowly suffocating under the weight of their own terror. I'm watching people like Varas risk everything just for the chance to laugh freely. I'm watching young officers hide poems like contraband and veterans end their lives rather than admit they still dream. I turn to face each matriarch in turn. You want to know what I contaminated your people with permission? Permission to be what they already are. Permission to stop pretending. Permission to choose joy even when it's illogical. Love, even when it's inconvenient. Hope, even when it's stupid. And yes, that's dangerous. Yes, it's chaotic. Yes, it changes everything. But the alternative, the path you're on, leads nowhere good. You know this. The statistics prove it. Your people are choosing death over your version of life. How much more evidence do you need? Silence stretched through the chamber. Then, unexpectedly, one of the matriarchs laughed. It was rusty, unpracticed, but unmistakably genuine. Apologies, she said, though she didn't sound sorry. But the human makes an amusing point. We sit here debating whether emotion will destroy us, while being driven entirely by fear. The irony is notable. Matriarch Senra, Merrick said, aghast. Surely you're not swayed by this alien's manipulation? Manipulation. She leaned forward. General, I am 347 years old. I have served this council for 2 centuries. In all that time, I have never once seen a session this alive. Officers actually debating rather than reciting. Passion in our arguments. Even you. Merrick, your hatred of change burns so bright it could power a city. How is that logical? It is necessary. It is emotional. You hate change. You fear corruption. You rage against anything that threatens your worldview. All emotions. General. You're not defending logic, you're having the biggest emotional reaction of all. You're just calling it principle. Other matriarchs stirred, some nodding, others frowning. The absolute unity of the council was cracking. Perhaps, the Prime Matriarch said slowly, we have been asking the wrong question, not whether emotion should be permitted, but whether it can be prevented. If even this council, the pinnacle of Korthari logic, operates on hidden feelings renamed as duty, what are we truly defending? Our survival, Merrick insisted. Our identity, everything that makes us Korthari. And what makes us Korthari? Varas asked quietly. Our suppression, our efficiency, or something deeper? When I was a child, my grandmother told me stories of the old days. Before the logic wars, we weren't emotionless then. We were poets and warriors, philosophers and lovers. We felt deeply and fought fiercely and created wonders, and destroyed ourselves with chaos. No, we destroyed ourselves with extremism, with the belief that we had to choose between heart and mind instead of using both. She looked at the matriarchs. What if the logic war's greatest casualty wasn't the billions who died, but the half of ourselves we killed to prevent it happening again? Hypotheticals and philosophy, Merrick dismissed. The reality is simple. Maintain our ways or fall to chaos. There is no middle path. Isn't there? I pulled up my final image. It was from that morning, the Virexia's mess hall, crowded with off-duty personnel. But instead of silent, efficient eating, there was community, conversations. Someone had painted a mural on one wall, abstract, imperfect, but undeniably beautiful. In the corner, a small group was attempting to recreate an Earth game called charades, failing spectacularly, but laughing at their failures. This is chaos, I asked. This is the terrifying future you're fighting, people connecting, creating, finding joy in small moments. Your efficiency might be down. But when was the last time anyone on a traditional Korthari ship looked that alive? Life without purpose is meaningless, Merrick countered. Purpose without life is meaningless, Varys responded. We've become so focused on survival that we've forgotten what we're surviving for. The debate raged for hours. Matriarchs who hadn't spoken in decades found their voices. Ancient grudges and buried dreams surfaced. At one point, two counselors nearly came to blows itself, a massive breach of protocol that seemed to shock them into laughter. Finally, the Prime Matriarch called for silence. We will vote, not on guilt or innocence that has been established. Star General Tell is unquestionably contaminated by human influence. The question is whether this contamination represents destruction or evolution, whether we embrace change or excise it, whether we choose the certain slow death of our current path or the uncertain possibilities of transformation. She looked at each counselor. This may be the most important decision in our history. Vote wisely, vote honestly. Vote as Korthari who remember that even logic is a choice driven by the desire to survive, and survival itself is the most emotional drive of all. The voting began. Each matriarch stood and spoke a single word: evolution or tradition. The tally kept on holographic display for all to see. Evolution, tradition, tradition, evolution, evolution. Back and forth it went. My heart hammered as the count stayed even. 6-6 with only the Prime Matriarch left to vote. She stood slowly, the weight of centuries in her movements. I have lived through the aftermath of the logic wars. I helped build the structures that saved us from ourselves. I have spent 300 years enforcing the very traditions we debate today. Merrick straightened, sensing victory. And in all that time, she continued, I have watched us slowly forget how to live. I have seen brilliance dim to competence, passion cool to duty, life fade to existence. She looked at Varys. Until one young general dared to blush, dared to laugh, dared to remind us that we are more than the sum of our suppressions. She paused, and the universe held its breath. Evolution. The chamber erupted. Not in chaos, even in revolution. Korthari had some dignity, but in a storm of voices, questions, challenges. Through it all, I saw Varys standing perfectly still, tears streaming down her face. Not tears of grief or even joy, tears of relief, of release, of a burden finally lifted. The council has spoken, the Prime Matriarch declared. The contamination is deemed evolution. Star General Tell retains her rank and command. The emotional expression protocols she has implemented are approved for voluntary adoption throughout Korthari space. We will not force change, but neither will we forbid it. This is madness, Merrick roared. You doom us all.
Perhaps, but we doom ourselves with purpose instead of default. She turned to me. Calendurel of Earth, you are no longer confined to Korthari military vessels. You have the freedom of our space, with all the rights and responsibilities that entails. Use them wisely.
I'll do my best, Prime Matriarch.
See that you do.
We are embarking on uncharted waters. We will need guides who understand both logic and chaos, both thought and feeling, both human and Korthari nature. A ghost of a smile crossed her ancient features. Welcome to the most terrifying experiment in our history, Mr. Durrell, the attempt to become whole. The session dissolved into planning, arguing, a dozen conversations happening at once. But I only had eyes for Veras as she made her way through the crowd to reach me.
We did it,
she said, wonder in her voice.
We actually did it.
You did it. I just made inappropriate jokes at the right moments.
Don't.
She took my hands, not caring who saw.
Don't diminish what you've done. You saved us. Saved me. Saved possibilities we'd forgotten existed. So what happens now?
Now, she smiled. That radiant expression that had started everything. Now, we learn. We grow. We make mistakes and create wonders and probably argue about both. We teach a civilization how to feel again while trying to figure it out ourselves. Sounds complicated. Sounds human. Sounds Korthari, I corrected. The real Korthari, the complete version. Around us, the chamber buzzed with the energy of change. Some matriarchs were already planning cultural exchange programs. Others debated new educational curricula that included emotional intelligence. Merrick stood alone, rigid with fury. But even he couldn't stop the tide now. There will be resistance, Varys warned. This vote changes policy, not hearts. Some will embrace it, others will fight it. The road ahead is long and uncertain. Good thing we're not walking it alone. She kissed me then, in full view of the council, the cameras, the watching millions. When we parted, I noticed several matriarchs smiling. Actually smiling. The universe really was changing.
You know,
I said, grinning at her expression.
You're adorable when you're revolutionary.
This time, she didn't blush. She didn't throw anything, she just laughed, free and clear and unashamed. And in that laughter, a civilization began to heal. The journey back to the Vyrexia was surreal. News of the vote had spread instantly through Korthari space. Some ships reported celebrations subdued by human standards, but riotous for Korthari. Others went into lockdown, commanders trying to maintain old protocols by force. But on our ship, the crew had gathered in the main hangar, hundreds of them, all waiting. When Varys and I entered, they didn't salute. They applauded. The sound washed over us like a wave, carrying weeks of suppressed emotion finally allowed to surface. Commander Nex stepped forward, and I noticed she was crying, openly, unashamedly crying. General, we prepared something. The lights dimmed, and holographic projections filled the space. At first, I couldn't understand what I was seeing. Then it resolved, and my breath caught. It was art. Hundreds of pieces. Drawings, poems, songs, sculptures made from repurposed ship components. Each one labeled with its creator's name and rank. Junior technicians and senior officers, maintenance crew and bridge staff. All of them creating, sharing, being human in the way that only Korthari could be human. This is what you gave us, Nex said. The permission to be more than our functions. To discover parts of ourselves we'd buried so deep, we'd forgotten they existed. We made you something, Kiravel added, stepping out from the crowd. She held a small object, offering it to Varys with shaking hands. It was a medal, handcrafted, imperfect, beautiful. The inscription read, For conspicuous humanity in the face of tradition. Varus took it with trembling fingers.
I don't know what to say.
Say you'll keep leading us, someone called from the crowd.
Say you'll help us learn. Say you won't let us go back to the way we were, another added.
Varus looked at the medal, then at her crew, then at me. When she spoke, her voice carried to every corner of the hangar. I can't lead you where we're going because I don't know the way. None of us do. We're all learning together. But I promise you this, we will not go back. We will stumble. We will make mistakes. We will have days where emotion feels like too much to bear. But we will not go back to being half alive. We will not return to the cages we've opened. We will become what we were always meant to be. Complete. The crowd erupted again. This time in cheers. Real, messy, emotional cheers. Someone started singing badly but with enthusiasm. Others joined in. Within minutes, the hangar had transformed into something between a celebration and a support group. People sharing feelings they'd hidden for decades. Varus and I found ourselves in a quieter corner, watching it all unfold.
It's really happening, she said softly. After 1,000 years, it's really changing.
This is just the beginning. One ship in a vast fleet. One small crack in a very large dam.
Cracks spread, she turned to me. What about you? Will you stay? Help us navigate this chaos you've created?
Wild horses couldn't drag me away. Besides, someone needs to make sure you don't backslide into being boringly efficient. I don't think there's any danger of that. She gestured at the celebration. We've opened a box that can't be closed. For better or worse, the Korthari will never be the same. Good. The galaxy has enough emotionless efficiency. It could use more Korthari poetry. Korthari laughter. Korthari love.
Love, she repeated, tasting the word. Such a small sound for such a large feeling.
It grows with practice. Then we'd better start practicing. She took my hand, intertwining our fingers. Fair warning, I have no idea how to do this. Romance wasn't exactly covered in command training.
Lucky for you, I'm an expert at winging it.
Is that what you call your diplomatic style, winging it?
It worked, didn't it?
She laughed, and I realized I'd never get tired of that sound.
Against all logic,
against all tradition, against all probability. Yes, it worked. We stood there, hand in hand, watching a civilization learn to feel again. Tomorrow would bring challenges. Merrick wouldn't give up easily. Other ships would resist. The transformation would be messy, painful, sometimes terrifying. But tonight, in a hangar full of singing Korthari, with Varus Tell wearing a handmade medal for conspicuous humanity, anything seemed possible.
Hey, I said, nudging her gently.
What? You're adorable when you're hopeful. She smiled. That transformative expression that had started a revolution. And you're incorrigible when you're right.
I'm always right.
Now that's definitely not true. It's emotionally true. That counts now, doesn't it? I suppose it does. She leaned against me, warrior and woman, general and revolutionary. Thank you, Callan, for seeing who we could be when we could only see who we were.
Thank you for being brave enough to become it.
The celebration continued around us, a joyful chaos that would have horrified the old Korthari, but felt perfectly right for the new. Somewhere in the crowd, Commander Nex was attempting to teach a group of junior officers an earth dance she'd seen in the cultural archives. Kiravel had started an impromptu poetry reading. Even some of the senior staff who'd been most resistant were beginning to thaw, awkward smiles cracking their professional facades. This was victory. Not the kind won with weapons or tactics, but with the simple, radical act of allowing people to be people, of choosing wholeness over perfection, of daring to feel in a universe that often rewarded numbness. So, Vera said, what's our next move, senior cultural advisor?
I thought we'd start with dinner. Real food, not nutrition paste. Then maybe watch a sunset on the observation deck. Have a conversation about something other than revolution. You know, normal couple things. Normal. She tested the word. I don't think we'll ever be normal.
Good. Normal is overrated. I prefer extraordinary.
Extraordinary, she agreed. I can work with that.
And so we did. One meal. One sunset. One genuine moment at a time. Building a future where Corthari's strength included vulnerability. Where logic and emotion danced together instead of fighting. Where a human diplomat and an alien general could fall in love and change the course of history with a single, perfect, inappropriate comment. The revolution had begun with 5 words. You're adorable when you're angry. It would continue with 3 more. I love you. But that's a story for another day.